Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you to Juliet and to SecurityWomen for the immense work that you do. Thank you to all of the women and men involved in so many different aspects of security work here in the UK, but also around the world. Working in our armed forces, in our security and intelligence services, in our police forces, in our public sector and private sector, and in our communities, the work to keep people safe, to keep our communities safe, and to stand up for our democracies, to stand up for our democratic values that we need to safeguard here and across the world. I wanted to begin obviously with just some reflections on the terrible events, as Juliet has talked about, the terrorist attack by Hamas in Israel and the impact that has. But then I want to talk mainly about some of our homeland security issues and why it's so important for women to be involved in security work here in the UK. This is obviously a deeply serious and difficult time for global security, to have the truly barbaric terrorist attack carried out by Hamas with young people at a music festival and women and children slaughtered, and the taking of hostages, including British citizens whose families are devastated. And we've seen too overnight the devastating bombing of a hospital in Gaza, killing hundreds of people, and part of a humanitarian emergency now in Gaza where urgent action is needed, and there are families here with loved ones in Gaza who are desperately worried. And in Israel and in Gaza, mothers and fathers grieving, communities broken, and Israelis and Palestinians, Muslim and Jewish communities caught up in the brutality of conflict forged from acts of unspeakable terrorism by Hamas. Under international law, Israel has a right to defend itself from terror attacks, and there must also be humanitarian protection for civilians and for the dignity of human life, where we know that urgent humanitarian action is needed. And the issues from a security perspective are not just about international law, they're also about the responsibility on all nations to prevent this conflict escalating across the region for the sake of security and safety of all. And while peace in the Middle East feels further away than ever right now as a result of what has happened, it's even more important that we reiterate our commitment to a two-state solution with a safe and secure Israel and a sovereign, secure Palestine, without which there can be neither security nor peace for anyone. Of course, this too has an impact on security and safety for people here in the UK. We've seen in recent weeks the appalling increase in anti-Semitic hate, including threats and assaults, and the appalling vandalism against Jewish primary schools, and the trauma that causes for Jewish communities mourning the attacks in Israel. There can be no place for anti-Semitic hate in our country. We've also seen a steep rise in Islamophobia, British Muslims being accused of terrorism or facing threats and assaults on our streets. And we cannot stand for rising anti-Muslim hate in our country. And yesterday I met together with the Community Security Trust, who provide support for Jewish communities and monitoring and security against anti-Semitism, and with Tell Mama, who do similar work in Muslim communities across the country and monitor Islamophobic hate. And it was important and moving to hear the work that each are doing, the rising threats that they're monitoring, but also their respect and support for each other's work too, because there can be no room in Britain for prejudice and hate. And we have seen faith groups coming together in Nottingham, in Manchester, the work of the Archbishop of Canterbury, which is hard in the face of the trauma that different communities face, but nevertheless is so important. In the words of Joe Cox, a friend and colleague who we lost to a terror attack, who said, "We always have more in common than that which divides us, even at the hardest of times." And so I thank the work that's being done now as we speak by police forces, by local councils, to provide support and reassurance to synagogues, to schools, to mosques, to community organisations, and also to recognise the work of the words of Ken McCallum, who has pointed out to recognising the impact that events in the Middle East can have on security and risks here in the UK and the heightened work that is underway. And I want to pay my thanks to all those in security and intelligence agencies who work so immensely hard to keep us safe, to the women and men in all aspects of our security work, whose work is so often unsung and so complex in the different challenges that we face, but so important to recognise, and we give our thanks for that. But I wanted to then also to mention something else, something very different that happened half a world away in the last few weeks, which was a woman, age 102, who died peacefully in New Zealand. She was known as Pippa Doyle, or by her maiden name in the work that she did for our country, Phyllis Latour, and the last of Special Operations Executive, female secret agents who worked in France behind enemy lines, taking immense personal risks and gathering intelligence that saved lives. And Phyllis was turned down for intelligence and security work after the war, despite the immense risks she took, the incredible bravery she showed, and the sophistication of the work that she did to keep our country safe. She barely spoke of her experiences for many years, and it's important that we do remember her and the work that she did. Because in so many different fields where we've seen generational change, where we have seen more women involved in leadership roles in all kinds of different sectors, different parts of our economy, different parts of our public life. We've seen more women involved, and part of that progress has been through the telling of stories, through recognising what happened and the work that women did in generations before. And I was involved pulling together a book called She Speaks, which is the speeches by women in all sorts of different forms of public life through generations that often went unrecognised. But of course, the challenge in security work is very often that work cannot be visible. And those stories cannot be told, no matter how remarkable they might be and how much they might be inspiring for future generations of women. Which is why where we can tell those stories, we should. 25 years ago, when I was first made a member of the Intelligence and Security Committee as a junior MP in Parliament, I sat with Mita Ramsey, who some of you may have heard of, and heard about her security work through generations, very often the stories that could be untold, but now increasingly can be told instead. And it's why, too, it's so important and powerful to see leadership roles now played by Madeleine Assandri at the Joint Intelligence Community, by Anne Keith-Butler at GCHQ, by Lindy Cameron at the National Cyber Security Centre, and by our women chief constables across the country, from Serena Kennedy to the former NCA chief, Lynn Owens, now at the Met. We have said always that having more women in security is important, and we should recognise the importance too of greater BME recruitment across our different security agencies and security work, where too often we still fall behind. And some of this is about recognising that equality and equal respect are at the heart of our democracy. Those are the values that our security agencies and organisations are tasked with defending. But it's also because the police are the public are the police. It's the same across our security work, that having that trust and consent in our security organisations also depends on them reflecting the country we are to make us better able to keep us safe, and having the different diversity of views and perspectives that allows us to recognise the very complex challenges we now face. And that's what I want to just finally reflect on, is the way in which we have seen the geopolitical landscape, the kaleidoscope, shaken and transformed, the security landscape shifting and changing. Obviously, recent events in the Middle East will have a significant impact, but it comes against a backdrop of rapid change. The events that we have seen in Ukraine, the events too, as the update to the government's integrated review warned in March, the transition into a multipolar, fragmented and contested world has happened much more quickly and definitively than anticipated. And as they said, we're now in a period of heightened risk and volatility. The continued challenges we face from Islamist and far-right extremists, the challenges too from the steep rise in state-sponsored threats and challenges which stretch far beyond conventional espionage, from the Salisbury attacks to the operations of the IRGC, and the source of the threats to our national security changing, so too are the forms that those threats and challenges take, be that private military companies like Wagner to huge organised crime syndicates and kleptocrats, cyber attacks, ransomware, and the impact of Chinese operations on our critical and strategic infrastructure and technology that could create new vulnerabilities for us in the future. So some of the principles that we in the Labour Party have set out, I have set out as the Shadow Home Secretary, about how we should respond to those shifting sands, is about the need for us to build a breadth of resilience, not just a depth of expertise in key areas. We need the new active partnerships to keep pace, international partnerships and domestic ones. For example, we cannot tackle terrorist money laundering without buy-in from banks and regulators. New partnerships, new players to deal with the different kinds of challenges, be that social media, companies or other organisations too. We need leadership from government and from the Home Office, and to recognise that trust and consensus are part of that. When democracy itself is the target, the resilience of our communities matters. And as we support our security intelligence agencies, our police forces in the work that they're doing, we support the work around counter-terror, we support the different security work, there are also areas where we need now to go further. We have called, for example, for a new overarching homeland security framework which puts state threats on a similar long-term strategic footing as counter-terror, to have the first contest strategy for state threats and challenges, and a new joint cell between the Home Office and the Foreign Office to work together on those changing challenges, including changes to the law and dedicated legislation too. Secondly, to have closer cooperation between the Home Office and the Treasury around the economic challenges that we face, the economic threats and vulnerabilities to our national security, where we need long-term planning, not simply a reactive approach. Thirdly, we need a much more concerted approach around the fast-changing issues around AI, for example, its use in both terrorism and radicalisation, and online radicalisation and new online challenges. And fourthly, we need to renew the work around hateful extremism and community cohesion, which has fallen by the wayside in recent years, but may be becoming more important than ever. But in all of these areas, we would hope this would be cross-party cooperation on national security through the years. We have taken a cross-party approach, and we have actually a principle in the Labour movement, which is we're stronger when we stand together than when we need each other to sink or swim alone. Nowhere is that more important than in the security of our nation, that we stand together, we work together on our security. And it's crucial that as we deal with those complex and ever-changing threats, that women are part of those debates, and every aspect of them, with the different roles, talent, perspectives in every single stage of those security debates as well. And to support our communities, this is from the most acute response that we need to pursue and take action with the full force of the law against those who seek to do us harm, and the prevention and the resilience that we need to build in every stage in order to keep our communities safe. All of you are part of that incredible work, and I want to just thank you for that immense work. And even if you may not hear so many stories of the women that have gone before you in the way that in politics I hear the stories of the women who made it possible for me to do this job and who went before me, know that they were there and know that they did some incredible work to save lives and to keep our communities safe. And we thank them and thank you for all of the work that you are doing, building on their legacy. Thank you very much.